I don't know about you, but reaching 10,000 steps always sounds easier than it really is. I often wonder, why 10,000? What is it about that number? Are there actually specific health benefits to it, or has someone simply pulled it out of, well, you know where? But none of that really matters. While on your 10,000 step crusade, have you ever really wondered where those steps are taking you? If isolation has taught us anything, it is the value of walking and running. I mean, everyone is out doing it. But while out on your expeditions, do you ever think about the people whose footsteps you may be tracing?
History. The word history often has one of two effects. It can either fill us with pure excitement and joy, which it does for me, or it can send a shiver down our spine at the thought of a slow, painful death from boredom. Unfortunately, too many of us experience the latter. Swiping through history's quest is to reignite the fire in old stories, bringing history into the 21st century. This is important to mention. Why? Because today we have the honour of jumping onto someone else's journey with history. Lewis Kirkbride is marching 250 miles from York to Hastings wearing 4 stone of armour. Why is he doing this? Not for himself, not for Re-Enactment, but for every man who is struggling with their mental health. Raising money for ManHealth, he aims to combat suicide. If anything, he is proving that even the most powerful of 6-foot warriors can talk about their feelings. I mean, no one is alone. Especially in times like these, we should all be looking out for one another. Sometimes a conversation is all it takes. Lewis's march is an awesome example of how history can be used in the 21st century to change people's lives. And we, here at Swiping Through History, believe it should be praised to the skies. He has given us 10,000 steps out of his 250 miles to get to know him, why he is doing this, and the historical significance of the march from York to Hastings. So here he comes. Now is our chance to do our 10,000 steps on the 1066 Battle Walk. I'm going to join you if that's all right.
Yeah, sure.
Off we go. How many more steps?
Probably done 100,000 through there and back.
100,000 already. Okay, let's do 10,000 more.
Motorised scooter.
So?
That'd make it easy, wouldn't it? In some bits you walk along and you can't get 10 yards without someone stopping you and talking to you about what you're doing and why you're wearing the armour. And are you a Roman? Get that quite a lot.
You're a Roman.
You're a Roman. And it's quite funny that, you know, sort of, you get like a Vauxhall Corsa with tinted windows and the big body kit on and stuff. They wind the window down and they stop next to you and they go, "Yeah, Hastings, mate, innit?" And then off they go. It's like, actually, so something did sink in from school. Something stuck.
History is there. It is somewhere.
Yeah.
That's what it is, you know.
Hastings!
People might not know it, but it is there. So, first of all, tell us about your armour and what has the response been like to your march? You know, you really have brought the power of history into the 21st century. So, do you think you've drawn more people, perhaps, who may not have already been interested in history, to history on your quest?
Oh, definitely. I mean, the armour is, you can spot me a mile off. It's something not quite normal here. And people do come up and talk and they ask, "Can I ask, what is it you're doing? Why are you wearing armour out in the rain and you're going to get rusty, aren't you?" And then people are talking about the kit itself, you know, the padding underneath, and they get really interested then in the fighting. So why is that like that? And is that real steel? And they're asking all these questions. Then, of course, we get talking about the cause and why I'm doing the whole walk and the weight of it and how that's like putting on this big heavy burden if you have a mental health issue every day struggling on. So there's all of those things. But the armour itself, yeah, it's as authentic as we can reasonably get for 11th century. So it is quite heavy, about 4.5 stone in all by the time I've added the weapons and the shield and stuff on. So it does make the long walks harder on the joints. I'm not a young man anymore, but yeah, it really has started those conversations. It's a conversation piece. It's sort of rekindled that interest I think some people have as a child in knights and Normans and Anglo-Saxons. And then they're actually going, "Oh yeah, I remember that, and didn't this happen at Hastings, and didn't that happen at Stamford Bridge?" And then we start talking about Harold and what a dude he was, you know, with his keeping his army together through all of this challenge and holding the Norwegians at bay and being quite rude to the King of Norway. I mean, when you can feel the weight of a sword in your hand and you can start to imagine what it's like to swing it or have it swung at you, it sort of bridges that gap between people now and in the past. And sometimes then it's like the horror sets in of what it must have been like to face thousands of Vikings or thousands of Normans charging up the hill on their horses. Holding that weight in your hand or just feeling the metal, holding the spear and waving the flag, it means something to people, and I think it sends them right back, yes.
And do you end up taking a lot of selfies with a lot of very excited children?
Yes, so it's difficult getting the camera right when they're down here and I'm 6'2". So yeah, I mean, that's great because the kids even put on their own armour to come and see me when they've heard about this in advance. That's been absolutely lovely. I was already interested in history and medieval combat and things anyway, and I kind of knew how heavy the armour was. Thought that would make a good representation of the mental health struggle, putting on this big heavy burden every day. But actually, what Harold did in 1066 was absolutely unbelievable. Knowing that William was coming, he was waiting on the south coast, and then his sneaky brother Tostig brought a Norwegian army to the north. So Harold had to march all the way to York in 5 days, bring his whole army with him, fight off the Norwegian army. Just then William landed on the south coast, so Harold had to turn all the way back down again, hold his army together after a bloody battle, and march another 250 plus miles. So I thought that's a really good physical challenge of endurance. Thinking about Harold and what he must have had to go through to motivate his men and actually put them through all of that and still hold them together and stand on that field at Hastings. I thought that was a really, really good metaphor for all the mental health stuff as well, a really good example of a guy defending his kingdom from all sides, motivating those around him and being a good leader. So Harold is quite some guy. When asked for a truce what he would offer the King of Norway, he said 7 feet of English soil because he's taller than most, and turned his back and rode off. So what a dude. See, it looks to me like that's the way through. Bit of a gap there. Okay.
So obviously 250 miles walking, that's quite a physical challenge. Can you tell us a little bit about how you trained for such a challenge physically? And also, do you have any idea of how the knights back, you know, the army of Harold would have trained all those years ago?
Yeah, what I did is basically I just put on as much gear as I could carry, all the armour and stuff to weigh me down, and start walking. I suppose there's no better training for walking in armour than walking in the armour itself, but apart from anything else, I want to make sure the kit was right and, you know, there wasn't anything rubbing and there was a lot of checking to do first and getting all the stuff just right. But 4.5 stones about as much gym as you need, I think, when you're walking out in the wind and the rain and up and down hills around County Durham.
How would they have approached a walk like this? Would they have just had to force themselves through it, or would they have, you know, would they have had ways of tracking their data as well?
Obviously no modern technology, so they can't look back over it and say, I wonder how far I walked. But I suppose they would have known the distances between villages when within their own little world people didn't travel as far back then. But as to the soldiers and the training, I think they would be professional soldiers who train day in, day out. They fight, they ride, they hunt. Their life is spent preparing for battle and all the stamina. If basically in some battles, if you're not fit, you're going to die. So professional soldiers will be marching and marching and marching and building things and always busy. So they would be incredibly fit, strong people, perhaps even more strong than people who do these gym regimes and stuff today.
So who needs the gym then, is kind of what you're saying?
Exactly, this is the 1066 battle walk diet, I guess, and fitness plan.
Yeah, but you have some protein bars in your bag, don't you?
Oh yes, I've got protein bars, there's peanuts, it's all high energy, high protein, high carb.
One?
Let me see what I've got. Okay, excuse me, this is where I have to fiddle with the medieval bag. Show you all the modern nasties hidden inside. But yes, we've got a bit of chocolate. We've got, there we go, protein flapjack. I'm going to get sick of the sight of flapjack by the end of this walk, but it's carbs, it's protein, it's sugar. It's a bit of a pick-me-up. Porridge bars. Porridge is great, and porridge I've had most mornings, in fact. Even like oatmeal and peanut butter milkshakes, that sort of thing. What else have we got in here? Chocolate, I'll hide that, that's naughty.
So you really are bringing history into the 21st century.
Yeah.
You're merging the two.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that this is the thing, the conditions were very different back then. Harold and his men, they probably had to just keep marching through the night at times and eat what they could find. And probably if you're a farmer, you're just as worried about your own army marching through as the enemy, because they'll take all your food that you'd stored up for winter. So if they can get hold of oats and things like that, I'm sure they would have taken them. So yeah, tougher times perhaps in some ways.
And most importantly, Lewis, tell us about ManHealth, the incredible work they do, and what made you decide to embark on such a journey.
A few years ago I had my own struggles, and it was my hobbies with medieval combat and English heritage shows and things that got me through. And at the time, if there had been an organisation like ManHealth where it's peer support, it's that first easy step, just somewhere to go and talk, where it's not too close to home, it's not like clinical support, you know, it's really easy. I would have used those guys. I only heard about them through work, but actually now they're getting bigger. It's all over Twitter and Facebook. It's really accessible, it's simple, because it's peer support. It's guys who know what it's like. They've been through this stuff themselves, so you're not being judged or anything like that. It's really, really easy to get into.
And so for you, if someone was watching this who might be struggling with something that they haven't spoken to anybody about, and they're not quite sure what that first step is or would be, what would you say to them?
Just talk to somebody. Sometimes that in itself is enough. You realise that other people are kind, they're sympathetic, they understand, or maybe they're even going through something similar themselves. I've had various chats with people along the way, and sometimes, you know, they've said for them that's been enough, just to get it off your chest, just to put it into words and articulate what you're feeling. Actually, that's sometimes enough to give you the lift and realise that other people around you are struggling too, and other people do care and they are kind, and that can put a different spin on things. So that in itself, just talking, makes a world of difference. But if you do need the extra support, organisations like ManHealth, that you can usually find them on places like Twitter, social media. You know, they are quite out there, and they're accessible. They're really easy to get in touch with.
Yeah, I mean, there's one thing that I really feel when walking on this journey with you, and that's kind of that you're walking in the footsteps of your ancestors. You're not walking alone, and that kind of fits in with the metaphor, really, doesn't it? That, you know, all of the journeys we embark upon, they've all been trodden before, they've all been walked before, they've been conquered before. So the fact that you're going to carry on your own, you're not on your own, because every man in Harold's army is walking with you in spirit. And I think that is something that's really powerful, is more powerful than any history lecture. You know, it's not something you can teach, that's something that you have to feel. So, you know, our 10,000 steps with you today is over. Thank you for giving us a little slice of your journey, and yeah, give me a COVID elbow tap. And we at Swiping Through History thank you. We wish you well on your way, and we hope we can spread the message further for you.
It's been a pleasure, thank you.
How awesome is that? See if you can follow him.